Hello. Happy Saturday. Today here in Bakersfield, it is currently 85 degrees Fahrenheit, which is probably normal for about this time of year. Although on Tuesday it's supposed to be 100 and Wednesday 102, but then cool down again next weekend to 86 on Saturday, which is Worldwide Knit in Public Day. Do you all celebrate that? This year will be our 10th year of celebrating it in Bakersfield. It's June 9th, and the idea is to knit in public. For us, that means we sit outside at a local marketplace where there's a big theater and a bunch of stores, so there's a lot of foot traffic, and they have a big fountain with seating around it, and we sit in that seating, and there's maybe 30, 40, 50 of us that attend, and of course people stop by and ask what we're doing, and it's amazing to see all those people knitting, and sometimes we actually find new people to join our group. So hello, happy Saturday. Let's see who's here. So we have Amber, Emily Beaton, Sue Mills from New Zealand. So they're starting their cold time of the year, right? When we're starting the warm time here. Bonnie Davis, Sue Mills. Oh, nope. Already got Fatima, Diane Eddy, Zahava Dembowicz, Carol Brasino, Francoise, Nina W., Sue Mette, Rona Shane, Carrie Hogan, Luana Hendricks, Renee Petrowski over in Atascadero. Hello, Renee. Christine Hattinger, Helga Anna from Vienna. Hello, welcome to our group. Demetria, hello, Demetria. And Olga, Jeanette Rowland, Katharina Continental Combined from Berlin. Deborah Cassidy, Mary McCullough, Caitlin Joe, Carol Corcoran, Jane Hart, Kathy Trakowska, Marlene Kern, hello Marlene, Priscilla Lopez, hello Priscilla, Lucy Keel, Sin 1217, Mary Shu, Lola Lixie, and DJ Aline Mazuka. We've got quite a few people on here today. Hello. And give me a thumbs up. Don't forget thumbs up. I forget to mention that. Sung Pak, hello. So I thought I would start out by giving you an update on my scarf, my double knitting scarf. Here it is. It's like a jelly roll right now. So I wanted to share with you something. You probably already know this, but maybe you don't. As your scarf gets longer and longer, anything you're knitting that's really long, it kind of gets, it lays in your lap and gets all twisted up. And actually the fabric can get a little bit maybe fuzzy or traumatized from switching back and forth in your lap so much. So I use a double pointed needle and I just stick it through there like a jelly roll. And it has to be long enough that it sits in my lap when I'm knitting. And then I can turn it like this. But if you don't want it so short that it's just hanging when you're knitting, because then it causes weight on your needle and it's going to distort your stitches. So right now it's a little bit heavy. I'm about 75% through with it. So I'll open it up and show you what I've got so far since last time. I don't remember where I was last time. Do I have the plaid? So I've got my sheepies, and then this is the center. Yeah, this is going to be like the back neck area here. So I didn't put a directional design in that area. It is reversible, but it's not directional. And then I started my little Scotty dogs, and then I did a Celtic knot and some sheepies, some more sheep. Isn't that cute? I may put a little black collar around the Scotty dog's neck. This is a similar Scotty dog chart that I used when I did this little tutorial on stranded color work, but I altered it I made his body shorter and a little taller, and I shortened up his snout. Because what I have to work with here is I have, this is 40 stitches wide, and I keep 2 stitches on each edge for the framing of it. So see, it's framed. And that leaves me 36 stitches to work with in the middle between the 2 edges where I can add my designs. So all of my designs have to fit in those 36 stitches. And that you know, is a boundary that I have to work within. And so far it's worked out okay. But the Scotty dogs, these Scotty dogs would not have fit because their bodies are too long. So I shortened up the snout. I changed the head a little bit, actually made the ears taller, changed the tail, shortened the body, but lengthened so they're taller. But because knitting is rectangular stitches, they're not square, everything gets more squat this way. In fact, this Celtic knot, when it's charted, it's actually taller than it is wide, but it works out really good on my knitting to make a square. And this is something that you'll encounter in intarsia as well. If you're charting your own designs, you need to be very aware that knitting stitches are not square, they're rectangular. And even though you might be using square graph paper to put your design on, the designs will get squat like this. So that's when it's a good idea to use knitter's graph paper, and you can get it for free. You know, you go on the internet, get on search Google or use DuckDuckGo or whatever search engine you want and put in knitter's graph paper. And you can go to these sites where you can actually put in your stitch and row gauge, and it will print you up 8.5 11 sheets. You can print it of knitter's graph paper. And I use that a lot. I did not use that for these, but I was very aware of my stitches being rectangular. For example, these look square, but the inner little squares, they're 2 stitches wide, but 3 rows tall. See? Same here. These are 6 stitches. Let's see, they're 6 stitches wide, but 7 rows tall, and they still come out a little bit rectangular rather than square. Same here. These are more rows than they are stitches, and you can see that I moved the inner square up and down. They're not centered because you can't center it exactly because I don't have an even number. I have an odd number of rows. They're an even number of stitches, odd number of rows. So there you have it. It's kind of fun. It's getting long. I'm about 75% done. It'll probably be another week. These are the colors that I have left to do that are going to be together. I'm really kind of excited to get out to the yellow and the blue. So that's fun. It's coming along. It's been really fun. I found a chart of a lion, you know, the Celtic lion. I found this, but it's too many squares. I'm going to have to figure out how to alter it because I only have 36 squares, and this is 49 squares wide for this lion. So I'm still looking. I found that in this book. I don't know if you've seen this one, the new Carolingian Modelbook. And this is actually, I do believe, for counted cross stitch and embroidery, but it has lots and lots of charts in it that you can use for knitting. But see, these are square. You have to keep that in mind. These are made on squares, so the design looks symmetrical here, but it will not look symmetrical on your knitting, so you might have to alter it. This is a good type of design because it doesn't really matter if it's squished up, it'll still look good. But it's all these charts. It's this book right here. It's one of the charting books that I use, and I found the lion in there, but I'm going to have to alter him. But it gives me a starting place. So that's that. And then you also know, last week I was telling you that I've been going through the last bits of all of my knitting projects. I went through my yarn. I go through my yarns, my whole stash in December every year and reorganize it. And I delete things that are used up or update my Ravelry library. And this year I had about 6 bins of things that were like remnants and unfinished or in process or things I just didn't want to deal with. And they've been sitting in my living room floor all this time. I started going through them last week and I just finished today. So I showed you some of my UFOs last week. I'm going to show you some more today and what I'm working on and what I'm going to do. So this one is it's going to actually be a throw. This is for my son. It's my idea was to make it like you dropped a stone in water, and so that you get the ripples, and those are the ripples going out. So I'm making, is it 6 increases per round? I don't remember, but it's the pie shawl thing. You know, it's the same as the pie shawl. So I'm out now to where it's going to be about as wide as it's going to be. And then I'm just going to extend this way and that way so that it's actually going to be a long rectangle with this in the center. And my son has a really pretty red leather couch, and I thought this would look good on it. The reason I chose this design is, one, I was working on doing pie shawl type things, but also I'm practicing a jogless join in garter stitch. You can see where I started here. Well, it started in the center, but I'm practicing on working that jogless, in garter stitch, slipping the first stitch when you change from the purl round to the knit round. And it's coming along. So you can see I do have some ends, and that's where I did wider when I had a much wider round. But where I have the little narrow rounds here, this is the wrong side. I'm practicing using that jogless join. You can see the path that it's taking as these go around. So that's one of the things, and that's in this bag with a bunch of yarn that goes with it. Kind of a stash buster type thing. So that's that one. I found tons and tons and tons of my swatches, which I have 2 out. Then I have this sock, which I knit a long time ago. And this is when I was first experimenting with the heel like I did for the Starry Starry Night socks, although this one is different than the Starry Starry Night sock. So this is a regular heel flap with the stitches picked up, whereas Starry Starry Night socks is not that kind of gusset. You increase your stitches all the way as you go down, and then you decrease them on the bottom. So this one I picked up along the heel flap, but I was experimenting with the design on the bottom of the, and I also did like just one line, one stitch between the decreases, so it made this line. I tried grafting to make that line, but I couldn't get it to work very good. But so that's an experimental sock, kind of cute. I need to practice that jogless join there. I did not attempt to do it on this sock. This is the other side. So the problem with, and I want to finish the other sock, and I probably will publish this pattern, but I knit this many years ago, and I still have the chart. I have everything with it, all my written directions, but the yarn is no longer available. So it's like, okay, so when you publish a pattern, everybody wants to use the same yarn that you used, right? Well, that creates an issue. I have a fly in here. I have a friend. I'd like to get rid of him. So then you got to knit new socks with some yarn that's available. And that's always kind of sets me back because I don't necessarily want to knit it again. So that's one sock. I may have shown you these before. This is another one. This one's really cute. I was doing dominoes, and it needs more stitches. It's too tight around the leg. I can get it on, but it's pretty tight. So this, you know, when you're doing stranded work, you need the wider because stranded doesn't really give very much. This doesn't have enough stitches, but the problem is that the dominoes fit perfectly the way they are. And I really didn't want to interrupt them by adding more stitches. So I have to play around with charting those and making the dominoes work. Or the alternative is to turn it into a fingerless mitt, which it would be perfect for that. Then I'd have to take off my heel flap. But I could make a cute thumb on that using the stranded knitting. So that's one there. That's a possibility. And then I've got this one here. This one's also cute. This is a sock. This one's pretty. Don't you like that? This one, I just put the stripe down one side. And I don't know. I think I need to, if I'm going to put a stripe, because, you know, the stitch pattern doesn't go all the way around. I mean, a stitch pattern goes all the way around, but it doesn't fit in perfectly. So that's when you add a stripe, and it also hides the join. But for a sock, you really need to have an equal stripe on the other side. So that's something I need to deal with on this one. All these things you have to think about. Or I could make it simply go down straight down the back of the sock to the heel. That wouldn't look so bad. I think that would actually look okay. It's something to think about. So I have all of those. Those are my UFOs that I'm running into. Plus that little wallaby for my granddaughter. And I put it on her and the 5-year-old, and it's a little bit big, so it has plenty of room for her to grow into it, which is really, really cool. Here's more charting stuff for socks. I also came across something that I started after Christmas, and I need to finish. This is worsted weight, number 4, non-superwash wool. This is from Wool to Die For, undyed. And I knitted up 6 swatches like this. So they're, I think it's 30 stitches wide and 40 rows long or whatever, but they're all exactly the same and they weigh the same and everything. And then I knitted 6. This is the exact same yarn from Wool to Die For, but it's the superwash. Same number of stitches, same number of rows. So I have 6 of these, 6 of these. And what's interesting is I weighed these, and these all weigh like 13.7 grams, 13.7, 13.8, all 6 of them, very, very close. These weigh 14.1 grams, and this is the superwash. So that makes me think that it might be coated with something, because it's the exact same yardage that this is. But it's interesting, you know. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to try a variety of blocking things and compare them. And I'm also going to send one of each of the 6 through the washer and the dryer over and over and over and over and over and over and keep track. I'm going to take a photograph every time it comes out with the measurements and see how long does it take this will felt right away, but we'll see how small it gets. You know, this one, we'll see how long it takes for it to felt. So it's kind of a game I'm playing with myself, just for my own self-knowledge. Okay, so I will keep you up. This might be something, I don't know if I'll make a video about it or just post on Facebook or Ravelry or on my blog. I don't know. We're going to do something like that. So, you know, if you want to ask me questions, it's okay. I will answer you. And if you ask a question, put it over in the chat and put the word question in all caps. That way I can see it. So let's see if anybody's got questions already. And there's a few over on Ravelry that I'm going to address as well. Okay, so I'm looking for the word question in all caps. Oh, hello, Delise and Julie. Okay. Question from Lucy Keel. Do you know of a source for rolls of knitter's craft paper? I do not know, but this is of a source for rolls. But this is something that I use. This is put out by Knitter's Craft Paper Journal. And you can see I use it. I write in here. I take these on vacation with me because there's some hearts that I'm charting. It is put out by, it's called knitterscraftpaperjournal.com. And I think you get a set of 3 or a set of 6 together. And let's see, this one is not knitter's graph paper. That's just regular graph paper. But I buy these several at a time, and I use these all the time. So it's like it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It has 5 rows, and you can't see it, but they're rectangles. Can't get it so you can see it. You can't see it. It's too bright. There you kind of see the rectangles. And I use that a lot. So that is one source. You can just Google knitter's scrap paper. Okay. Wow. Carrie Hogan says the new Carolingian book is out of print, expensive to acquire, $90 to $170. Wow. Well, I've had it for a while. It's probably was in print when I got it. Okay, so I'm going to show you some other things. Demetria asked over on Ravelry about how do you finish off corrugated ribbing. So I have things to show about that. These are I've just found these in my swatch stash. So this one is knit 1, purl 1. This is the bind off here. Knit 1, purl 1, corrugated ribbing. And this one I just did a flat plain bind off. You can see that. And it looks pretty good. It's flat. Okay. This one is knit 2, purl 2, corrugated ribbing. And what I did here was I worked 1 row of the solid blue, just knits across, and then I bound off in pattern. So for the knits, I bound off knitwise, and the purls, I bound off purlwise. So it gives you a little thicker. You can see the two, compare them. See, this one's thin. This gives you a little more substantial. And you can see the chain across the bottom here. This one you don't see the chain because the chain is facing the bottom. Here, the chain is facing forward because I bound off knitwise. Here, when you bind off in pattern, it forces the chain to go straight across the bottom so you don't see it on the front of the work. And it gives you this little bit of a decorative edge there. So that's 2 possibilities. This is my Zweig, and what I did on this one, I did knit 2, purl 2 corrugated ribbing. What I did on this one is I knitted 1 round, and then I bound off purlwise. So it doesn't give a roll, but you don't get that chain. I don't like the look of the chain necessarily when I'm doing corrugated ribbing. Can you see that? Then on my, let's see, hold on, let me go get my yellow sweater. On my yellow sweater, what I did was I knitted 1 row, because the reason you knit the first row is because you don't want bicolored purl bumps. If you purl the first row, you'll have bicolored purl bumps right here where you have the color work. Okay, so the very first row I knit. Then I worked 2 rows of reverse stockinette, and I bound off purlwise. And what it does is it curls like that. It gives you this curled edge. It's a lot more substantial looking than the other methods that I showed. Here's the bottom. This is the button band. Here's the bottom. You can see what it looks like. And it can look like it's going to flare on you, but when you block it, it looks okay. If you're worried about it flaring, you can go down a needle size when you do it. Now, I have another sweater that I gave to my daughter-in-law. It was my master's sweater for my level 3 sweater. And I used I-cord. It had corrugated ribbing on the bottom, the neck, and the cuffs. And I used an I-cord bind off on that, and it looked good. I just did a 2-stitch I-cord. It does not have to be 3-stitch. And you can practice this on a swatch. Of course, practice everything on a swatch. Okay, let's see if there's more questions. Oh, somebody says Hogwarts double knitted bookmarks by Ann Kingston has a similar lion 15 stitches wide. Thank you. I'll take a look at that. And I adjusted the settings for the chat so that you guys can put links over there now. I don't know why, but the what comes with the standard chat is prevents links from being shared. So I went in and did some experimenting, and now you can post links. Okay. Question from Sung Pak. Do you use knitting software? And if you do, what do you use? For charting, I do. I have 2 charting programs that I use. Now I use a Mac, so that limits me. There are more charting programs for PC than there are for Macs. I use Stitch Mastery, and I use Knit Visualizer. Knit Visualizer is my fallback on. It's the one I use most often, but it's not really good for, you can't use it very well for double knitting or brioche or mosaic knitting, because you cannot put numbers on both sides of each row. So in double knitting, you know, double knitting's okay. I shouldn't say it. You can use it for double knitting, but for brioche, because you need 2 designated rows, 2 lines for each row. So in 2-color brioche, it takes 2 lines of charting to do 1 row of 2-color brioche. So you have 2 lines this way, 2 lines this way, 2 lines, etc. If it's flat, if it's knit in the round, it doesn't really matter, but it would still, you can't say light side, light color, dark side, you know, light side, dark color. You can't make those designations in Knit Visualizer, but you can in Stitch Mastery. So I use Stitch Mastery for double knitting and mosaic knitting. I have purchased for hundreds of dollars other programs for designing, but I never have even opened them or looked at them because I use pencil and paper, and I don't have any problem using pencil and paper. It works good for me. So I hope that helps you. This is from Olga. Question, do I have to buy the pattern for the ITAG class? If you want to take the class, yes, you have to buy the pattern. It's $25 and it's worth every penny. It's worth way more than $25. I teach you a tremendous amount of skills, a tremendous number of skills in that program, in the tutorial. Okay. Now, let's see. Let's go over to Ravelry and see what people are asking over there, okay? This is from Sewing Marie. She says, would you please explain how to go about narrowing the neckline of a garment that is knit top down and has been cast on with the provisional cast on? Also, is it possible to cast on provisionally with any pattern that is knit top down when the provisional cast on is not called for? Yes. So what you do, for example, let's say that you were going to knit this sweater top down. This was knit top down. So this particular one, you start out by doing the ribbing first. But you could leave, it's just a few rows of ribbing. Wow, and I did a tubular cast on for that. Very cool. I amaze myself sometimes. Anyway, I would leave the ribbing off. I would just start right down with the stitches below it and put that on as a provisional cast on. That way you can do the whole sweater when you come back to it. If this isn't exactly the point where you want to add the ribbing yet, you can continue knitting up. You would come back and you knit up, and you can make decreases or short row shaping to the back neck if you want. Now this does have short row shaping. This is the front. You can see here's the ribbing, and then this is the knitting before the color work starts. On the back, here's the ribbing, and there's about an inch extra fabric before the color work starts because there's short row shaping in there. Okay. Yes, so let's say that you did pick up those stitches and you wanted the neck to be narrower. You would just do some decreases, and you would spread them out evenly distributed. Just do some knit two togethers or SSKs, whatever it is you want to do, until you get the neck the size that you want it, and then you would do your ribbing or your finishing detail. And yeah, you can do it on any sweater. That's a very practical thing to do. It's a great question. And then, of course, there was Demetria's question that I answered already. What's the best bind off to use with corrugated ribbing to keep it from curling? Now, the reason that corrugated ribbing curls is because it pulls in. So if it curls too much for you, you can try going up a needle size. I didn't change needle size here. And you can see it just hangs straight down. This has been folded up and laying over a chair, so it hasn't been laying flat. But you can see it's not curling. It doesn't curl. You just need to try blocking it and see if that helps. And sometimes if you did a swatch and your swatch gives you one thing, but your sweater's giving you something else, you might need to make a little bit bigger swatch. Sometimes the swatch is too small to give you accurate information. Okay, this is from Anne Tremoliers. She says, first, thank you to the top moderators who are doing a real daily fantastic job. Yes, thank you to all my moderators over on Ravelry and the moderators over here in YouTube. She says, I have two questions. What can we possibly do with a single ply yarn? I don't understand how to use it because I have the feeling that the durability is very low. And what is the best way to block cables in order that they are not flattened? And she's also interested in the answer about the corrugated ribbing bind off. Single ply yarns are really pretty in shawls, cowls, things like that. I have knit sweaters with them, but I think that they tend to pill more than plied yarns. So just keep that in mind if you want to knit a sweater with them. I do sort of stay away from them a little bit now that I've learned that, because I knit a lot of sweaters. The majority of my knitting is sweater knitting. Anything that's going to have any agitation on it will pill very easily with a single ply yarn. But they're so beautiful and they're so soft, and you just want to knit with them. Okay. Let's see. Oh, her second question is about blocking cables. When you block cables, you block them like ribbing. You lay them out when it's wet. You do not stretch it laterally. You allow it to be the way it wants to be because it's going to be three-dimensional and it will pull in naturally. So let's say you have this swatch that's this wide and you worked a cable and just pretend like this has cables. And now it's only this wide, but it's the same number of stitches. We're just pretending here. Let's pretend that this is a cable instead of corrugated ribbing, but the cable will pull the fabric in this way because of the cable crossings. Don't attempt when it's wet to stretch it out to be the size of the fabric that it would be without the cables, because that distorts the cables. It makes them lay completely flat, and then they're not as attractive. If you did that by accident, you can fix it by getting it wet again and letting them pull in a little bit. They don't have to be super pulled in, but enough that the cable stands up from the fabric, that the pearls sink down in and the cables stand up from the fabric. That's what you want to see. Okay? All right, let's see if there's some more questions here. And then I have another, I'm going to tell you the story of this sweater here, okay? Okay. Carol Corcoran, question. I just posted a picture in question in Rav group under Ask Anything. Can you take a look at that? It concerns my Zweig moderator helping with thought. Since you live, I would ask you. Okay, let me go look. Is it in my group? Okay, I got it. Ah, pretty. I've completed the lace section, but I'm worried about this neck opening. It measures about 15 or 16 inches across for a circumference of 30 to 32. Seems really big. I'm working on next colorwork section, but I don't know. What do you think? So it looks like it's on, you do have it on a provisional cast on. You're fine. Just when you go and you pick it back up, you can decrease those stitches. You'll be fine. It'll be fine. Don't stop what you're doing, but make sure that the yoke part's going to fit you. You need to try it on periodically, okay? Make sure that that's fitting. You may have encountered that you have a different stitch gauge between your lace knitting and the stockinette portion. I found on my Zweig that up here, there's a lot of twisted stitches, right? Well, the twisted stitches kick in here. I found that these twisted stitches pulled the fabric in a lot. So I actually went up in needle size in this section because the twisting, working those Bavarian twisted stitches pulls the fabric in sideways. So I did go up a needle size, not up here because there's no twisted stitches. It's down, the twisted stitches start about here, about 5 or 6 rows down and go to here. And that's where I increased in needle size. And I did start it first with the same needle size and found that it was pulling in, and that I ripped back and did this size with one size larger. And then you got to remember to go back to the first needle down here. Okay, don't forget to do that. Okay. Kathy, thank you. She says that links are still being held for review, and she clicks the show button for them to appear immediately. Thank you very much. Fatima, question. Sorry, I missed the point about ITAG class. Could you give me a bit more information? May I do it from here or needs to be in person? It's an online, it's what it is a tutorial that you purchase on Ravelry, and I have 2 of them right now. There's ITAG stands for It Takes a Guild. Let's all of us together. So the first one is It Takes a Guild cardigan, and that was the raglan cardigan that with the shawl collar and the pockets and the cables. Very, very pretty. I'll go get it in a second. The second one is called ITAG yoke, and it was this one. So what it is, it's about making a yoke. How do you make a yoke? And it could be a pullover or a cardigan. It's up to you. Let me go get the other one so I can show that to you too. So this was the first one. So this is a raglan. So we explored raglan shaping, and we learned how to do the shawl collar, how to add a cable decoration here, how to do the pockets with the cables on them, the cable down the back, down the sleeves, how to do the shawl collar. And I gave lots and lots of different options. You don't have, this is in brioche. You don't have to do your shawl collar in brioche. It can be done. I mean, I gave lots of options for everything, lots of options for the cables. If you go on Ravelry, you can see all the projects that people made, and each one is different. Each one is a work of art. But what I'm teaching you are the skills of how to design a sweater, how to knit a sweater for yourself that fits, not based upon a pattern. This is not a pattern. It is a tutorial. And each one is about 60 pages long, and they have many, 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 many videos little videos I've associated with them for each of the little elements of what you need to do for your sweater. Plus, there's live stream videos like this for answers and questions about them. So you might want to take a look. If you go to Ravelry, maybe somebody could post a link to each one of the patterns for me over here in the conversation. Go and look and see what people have done, and then it'll give you a better idea whether you want to try it or not. Sue Mills, question. I love that green and orange sweater. What ITAG is that? Can I do it now? The green and orange one, this is the Zweig. This is not my design. I think this is Caitlin Hunter. I think that's the designer. It's called Zweig. But a couple people did this one as the ITAG because I teach you how to adjust it to fit your body rather than just doing a standard size. The problem with standard sizes is some of us have bigger arms than our bodies, or smaller arms than our bodies, or we have bigger bust, small little shoulders. We're not the ideal models. Very few of us are ideal models. So what I'm teaching you is how to make a sweater that fits your body. What adjustments do you need to make in the sleeve? Like if you were using it, for example, this pattern, there's no pattern. It's a tutorial. And so you just start at the beginning and you follow the directions on how to measure yourself, how to knit a gauge swatch, how to take the gauge, how to draw a schematic for your body. I teach you how to do a schematic, and then how do you figure out how many stitches and rows you need for your schematic, where you need to make changes, if your arms need to be smaller or larger, etc., etc. It's a completely different way of looking at knitting. It's probably how people used to knit before there were patterns. If you've ever been a seamstress, you can relate if you've had to do alterations. This is how to alter in knitting. Okay. So people altered the Zweig. They used this pattern. Some people used other patterns too. You can look on the link of the page for the pattern for the ITAG. This would be in the ITAG yoke because this is a yoke sweater. Okay, maybe that's the answer that you're looking for. Okay. Oh, Francoise put the library for the patterns up. Thank you. And then Ravelry says, go to the group on Ravelry Knitting with Suzanne Bryan. And there's tons of information there too. Yes. When working corrugated ribbing, how can you tell which color you're holding in your dominant hand? That is an excellent question. When I'm doing stranded knitting, I hold the foreground color in my left hand and the background color in my right hand. Or you can hold them both in your left hand, but the foreground needs to be to the left of the background color. Or you can hold them both in your right hand, but the same thing, the foreground color needs to be to the left. The foreground color is the one that you want to be dominant. Now, when you're doing corrugated ribbing, it's a completely different story. If you're holding both yarns, one yarn in each hand, it's much easier to purl with the yarn that's in your left hand and knit with the yarn in your right hand. It's more expeditious. And same thing if you're holding both yarns in your left hand, the yarn held to the left is easier to be the purl yarn. So I don't work with a dominant color in corrugated ribbing. I work with more which color is going to be purled, and that yarn always stays to the left of the knit yarn. Does that make sense? And it's okay to do that. Let's see. That's what I did here. So this up here, I held the red in my left hand, the yellow in my right hand. And for the ribbing, I held the yellow, the red, worked out the same way because I happened to do the purls with the red. So the red was in my left hand, the yellow was in my right hand. But it could have been that I wanted to make the purls yellow and the knits red. And if that was the case, I would have held the yellow in my left hand and the red in my right hand. Good question. Great question. That means you're thinking. I love that. Okay, I'm going to do one more thing here. I'm going to share with you the story of this sweater. This is let me take this one off. This is my, I call it, it takes Into the Jungle. I call this Into the Jungle. I'll put it on first, and then I'll take it off and show you. So this is stranded knitting, and it was knitted. It's actually Fair Isle, knitted in the round. Here's my steek, and cut down the front. The armholes were cut. So when I started this, the thought process, I started out, I knew I wanted to make a sweater, and I knew I wanted it to be a cardigan, and I knew I wanted a shawl collar. Those were the things I knew. So I started out, I got all my things here for the, I save everything. This is how I do sweaters. So first thing I did was figure out what yarn I wanted to use. And I knew I wanted to use Jamieson's of Shetland. And this is the Spindrift. So I ordered a color card so I could have all the colors. Okay. So I could experiment. And I actually ordered a little, I have a whole bag of these. Actually, they're little mini skeins so I could actually play with them of all the colors. And I use that a lot. Then I said, okay, I just looked through magazines and found pictures where I liked the colors. I wanted to see what attracts me. And this is a picture that was in a magazine for these dishes. But what I liked was this part right here. This attracted me. I liked this teal, the greens, the yellows, and the oranges. So then what I did, I didn't bring my color card in here. I took a class from Janine Bajus, and if you ever get a chance to take a class from her on designing your own sweater, it's very worth it. She specializes in Fair Isle knitting. And she has you, you bring pictures. You know, I probably had about 10 different pictures, but this is the one that I settled on. And you start looking through your yarn for any of these colors. And they don't have to be exactly the same. So they can just, you know, like some of these in here, some of these over here, some of these oranges, the greens. And I ended up using the neon green, which wasn't in here at the time. Oops, I dropped my other one. See, it goes, it doesn't really, it gives you this green right here. So I went through and I pulled out a bunch of colors, probably about 20, that were all possibilities. And then I started swatching them, just randomly putting them together. First, I divided them. I divided dark and light. And I used my camera on my phone. You can go to your camera and you can put it in black and white mode. So it's in black and white mode. So you see my room here? It's in black and white mode. And I look at my yarn in black and white because I want there to be change in value from one yarn to the next. If all of the yarns are of a similar value, you lose the effect of the color work. Your eye will just blend them together. So then I divided all the yarns light and dark based upon my black and white. And then I started swatching. Janine calls this speed swatching with a dark and light. And I just kept changing, just randomly putting them together until I started finding combinations that I liked. I really like this up here. I like this play here. Look at that. See, I used this one right here. See this? And this is up here. I didn't like these. See, these didn't work for me. Although I like these colors, this did not fit in with my idea of my design. More of these colors at the top were fitting in. Then let's see, what did I do next? Then I think I made a bigger swatch. Continuing experimenting. I really like this effect in here. Isn't that pretty? What I was trying to find is, I just love that where it just changes like that. It almost shimmers. That's what I was looking for. This is pretty too. Isn't that pretty? So just swatching, swatching, swatching. Then I went through some charting books and looked for charts. These are some out of Alice Starmore. And I started cutting and pasting some together. I started moving. You can see I moved them around, changed them a little bit. Then I decided where I wanted to put my colors, in which rows, to get the effects I was looking for. And then I knitted a big swatch. Oh, here's some patterns I tried that were fails. That was a fail. These were fails because there was not the equal amount. I wanted the equal amount of foreground and background. This one totally failed. Did not look good. I did swatch it, but I don't know where that swatch is. So then I knitted my swatch. And I did, and I tweaked it more after I did the swatch, but this was my initial swatch. And I liked it. But this is not this design. And I tweaked it some more. And let's see, where's my big swatch? Here's my big swatch for this sweater. And I copied it on the copying machine and taped it together so I could see what it would look like over a bigger surface. This is life-size swatch. And then I made it over an even bigger surface because I wanted to see what it was going to look like on my body. And I didn't want to have like a yellow, the green stripe right here. You know what I mean? So I did this big swatch so I could move it up and down and decide where did I actually want the stripes to be on my sweater. And I did all of that, and all of that took me a long time before I actually started knitting. And I have another swatch somewhere. I don't know, it's probably in my swatch thing. Then here's all my little experimental yarns. I kept everything. I have everything there. Let's see. And then when it took me about a year altogether between when I started designing it and it actually got knit. Once I started knitting, it went pretty fast. And Janine Bajus, who taught me the course, was also in the process of making this book, The Joy of Color. I highly recommend taking classes from her if you ever have the opportunity to. And in her book, I'm in here somewhere. Oh, there I am. And there's my sweater and my design process. And what's really cool about some of the things that I learned from her and some of the things that I did on my sweater, for example, you can see on the shoulder that it's sloped, right? The shoulder is sloped, doesn't go up straight. So this is actually short rows in the round, all together in the round. So, and I learned that from Janine. So on the shoulder, here's the short rows. You can see you just turn. Here's the short row turns and the additional knitting that happened. This is the inside of the sweater. And they aren't really affected. And then once you have that done, then this is a 3-needle bind off. And I did change Janine's method a little bit. She had you go directly to a 3-needle bind off, but then you get all those bicolored pearls. So I did one round, continued doing, after I finished that, did another round with the brown, then did the 3-needle bind off so you don't get the bicolored pearls and it doesn't really show. Another thing that I did was on the inside where the armholes were cut. This is the armhole, and it was steeked. I grafted the steek together at the top, so the steek goes continuously around the armhole. There's no raw edges. I seamed it down at the bottom on either side, so there's no raw edges. It was really fun. Here's my turned under steek on the front. Then for a long time, I didn't know what I was going to do for the shawl collar, because I knew that I wanted to have it turned back. And I initially thought I was going to do corrugated ribbing. And then after that, I thought, well, the corrugated ribbing, if you turn it back, it doesn't look so good. So then I thought I would do double knitting, and continue this design across the double knitting. And I did try it. And by the way, this is knit on size 2 needles, US 2s, and this is knit on a 0 because it's brioche. So I ended up spending a lot of time working on the shawl collar. It took me forever, and I finally realized brioche was the answer because it would be reversible, and so I did my brioche collar and brioche at the bottom. And I'll tell you, I learned a lesson because I didn't know what kind of ribbing was going to be on the bottom of my sweater when I started. This is bottom up, so this is the bottom, and it's bottom up. So I did a provisional cast on down here when I first started my sweater, and I started right out with the color work. And I learned, don't do that. You need to do one row of a solid color, because it worked fine this way. Everything looked good. But when you turn it this way and you take off the provisional cast on, wherever you have your changed color, you have a half a stitch of one color and a half a stitch of the other color, because the V's are going this way. So all the stitches were like this. So then I have a half green and a half blue that makes the new stitch. That doesn't work very well. So that created quite a conundrum. I worked through it. I got it taken care of, and it looks just fine. But I did learn from that instance that you need to knit one plain row before you start the color work. Then you have something to work off of the provisional cast on. It's the same thing when we did the ITAG yoke, and I told you, you do the provisional cast on them before you start the short rows, even though Ann Budd says you can do the short rows immediately. Knit one round first after the provisional cast on, then do the short rows, so that your short rows aren't right on the provisional cast on. It's easier to pick them up and conceal them otherwise, okay? What else was I going to tell you about this? I think that's all I'm going to tell you about that. But the designing is fun, and so the picture that I showed you, that inspiration picture, was the start of it all. So I have a whole file on my computer that I call inspiration pictures, and anytime I see something where the colors just really draw my eye, I put it in that file. I also tear pages out of magazines, and I have two drawer, so 4 drawer file cabinets full of my knitting things, papers, classes, and inspiration pictures and other things like that that are not on my computer. Okay, so let's see. Let's go back up here. Kathy Trikowska says, as an English style knitter, I find it easier to knit with my left hand and purl with my right. That's fine. It's okay. It's okay. Everybody, whatever you're comfortable with is good. Angela Childress is here. Hello, Angela. Olga Alvarez, question. I got needle 17 stitches, need 24 rows, but the yarn calls for 17 stitches and 23 rows. Would it be okay with divided with 4.5? I have 4.2 stitches. I think you're going to be fine. I think that's going to be fine. It's close enough. Marlene says, I learned that phone camera trick just this past spring at the Pittsburgh Creative Arts and Crafts Festival. There were free workshops, and one was all about choosing colors and combining them. Cool. Yeah, I love the phone trick. Deborah Cassidy. Question, what was the name of the teacher of the Stranded Color Work class? Janine, Janine Bajus. And she teaches workshops. This is her book that she wrote, The Joy of Color. And this does not replace her workshop, but you can get a lot of information. She teaches you her system, starting with the inspiration picture, picking out your colors, working with a chart, doing the speed swatches. She calls these speed swatches. See, speed swatch. Picking your patterns. She works you through all of that. It's a very, very good book. And she's really good in person. Excellent teacher in person. Okay, let's see here. She has a good website too. Okay. Mrs. Nook Chili, have you seen the KnitSonik books on Fair Isle technique? She draws lots of color ideas from nature and architecture. I have the KnitSonik books right here. I have all of them. There's 3 somewhere. I just saw them. Here they are. Actually, there's 4. So there's KnitSonik Stranded Colorwork Source Book. Oh, I have 2 of those. I have 2. And so this is just pictures, ideas, using the inspiration pictures, making swatches. Then she has Stranded Colorwork Playbook. More pictures, trying different colors. Then there's Coloring Companion. And this gives you an opportunity, it's like a coloring book, to fill in your colors and try your combinations. You can use like colored pencils. I do that on Excel or in Numbers because you can put colors in those too. But these are nice. And I didn't realize I had 2 of the source book. I'll have to give one away. Oops. What's that? Oh. Get in there. Okay. It's a tight bookcase. Okay. The speed swatches were knit in the round, but you break the yarn at the end. So it's, and it takes a little bit of time. It is speedier than knitting all around. Let me show you. So, and you tie knots. All of these are knotted. Because otherwise the stitches on the edge are really wonky. You know, they don't keep the even tension when they're close to the edge. So I knotted every 2 rows, I knotted them. Same here. But it's knit in the round. But I broke them, broke the yarn, started back over here. So they were knitted on a straight needle. I still like that color a lot. Okay. So these I did not have long floats on the back. I literally broke the yarn right here and then started over here. But you can do it however you want. It's very fun. And it's a real eye-opener because sometimes you think you'll have 2 colors that are going to go together and then you have 2 that you know will not go together and they look awesome. So keep your mind open. Don't box yourself in with what you're going to try. Just randomly pick them and try them and you'll be really surprised at the little effects that you get that you really, really like. Okay, any more questions? Next week, I don't know what we're going to talk about, but I'll find something of interest and maybe pick another topic like we did today. Be sure to ask your questions over on Ravelry. I'll answer them. You can ask whatever you want. If I don't have an answer, I'll say I don't have an answer, or I'll try to find the answer for you, okay? Oh, Caitlin Joe, question. I'm knitting a scarf in Fisherman's Rib in bulky yarn, but one edge looks super neat and clean, but the other is wobbly. How would I fix this? What are you doing on the edges? Are you doing the edges the same? When I do brioche, which is Fisherman's Rib, in one color or two? Is it Fisherman's Rib in one color or two? If you're doing in one color, the edges should be, okay, then make sure you're doing the same thing at both edges. And get off the scarf for a bit, get onto a swatch and practice and try doing new things, different things at each edge on the swatch so you don't mess up your scarf. And you don't have to use the same yarn. It can be any yarn. Get on my other channel on Knitting with Suzanne Bryan. I have tons and tons of videos on brioche knitting in one color and two color, including how to do the edge stitches. So you can look over there. It's called Knitting with Suzanne Bryan, and look up one color brioche. I have a huge section just on brioche. And thank you, moderators. Yes, you guys do a great job. I don't even notice those crazy people. I really appreciate it. And don't forget to give thumbs up. And we'll see you back here next week. Oh, somebody asked when will the new classes? Probably towards the end of June. I'm actually really enjoying taking a break right now from teaching. I don't have any live classes here in Bakersfield right now, and no online classes going on right now. I am working on beefing up my boot camp online courses. So I want to be able to focus on that. And then we'll start the swatches class probably towards the end of June into July. But I think you'll like it a lot. It's going to be fun. I'm going to start working on my swatch real soon so you can see it. I think we'll use a worsted weight yarn, so you can think about that, okay? Think about some worsted weight yarn. Get two colors, because we'll do the cables with the intarsia on one of the swatches. You can use the technique of using your camera so you get two different color values. And that's it. We'll see you next Saturday. Yay! Worldwide Knit in Public Day. It's Worldwide Knit in Public Day next Saturday. Our guild is going to be out at the marketplace in the morning from 9 to about 11 till it gets too hot. And then we're going to go to a Mexican restaurant and have Mexican food and margaritas. Yay! And then I'll be back here at 2 on that day to see you. I won't have too many margaritas, I promise. Okay, see you next time. Thumbs up. Bye. Happy knitting.